Inside the home component, we can observe that, based on whether the web page is displayed in handset or bigger devices, the breakpoint observer will be returning the appropriate cards array. And this cards array will be used in the ng4 directive of material grid tile, in the HTML file. Now, we are going to remove all these from Angular project, and we will be getting this data from a microservice. Also, we will be getting some images from microservice to be displayed in these cards. Let's get started. First, let's understand microservices. Microservices are individual small services at server side, which serves data to the front end. When front end requests something, the server gives back response after fetching data from the database. Now, we are going to set up Express.js for microservice. For that, first we will close all UI project files and folders. Open our main project folder in Terminal. To install Express globally, type the command npm install-g express generator. Once the installation is complete, type the command express followed by project name for the service. We will name the Express project Market Service. We can see that an Express project got created and there is some files already created for us. Let's take a look at each folders and files. Bin folder contains the www file which holds the configuration for the working of application. We need not change anything here. If required, we may change the port number. It is the port at which the server runs. We were running Angular application on port 4200. Let it be 3000 for the server. The public folder contains the static files to be served to the front end. This includes images and other file assets. We will add images to this folder later. In the routes folder, we place files for different routes. Say, for routes like //user, we will maintain different files to execute different functionalities. The views folder contains the viewable HTML type contents, which are actually not required for our project. App.js is the main file or starting point of Express application. Package.json file contains the information about the project and the dependent packages which needs to be downloaded for the proper working of application. To run the application, first we need to download all the required packages. For that, run the command npm install. Now we can see a new folder Node Modules which contains all the downloaded packages. Let's run the application by running npm start app.js. The app.js file started execution. Open the browser and hit localhost with port number 3000. The server application is running and currently we are seeing output of route/. If we change the route to /users, we see the output of route/users. Let's understand this from code perspective. In the app.js file, we can see that there are two routes defined. They are pointing to two files in the routes folder. For example, when the user hits the endpoint /users, the JavaScript file users in the routes folder will be executed. In the user's JavaScript file, currently there is a get method. Get is the simplest method for getting response to UI from the server. We will use this method for now. Other methods include post and put, which may contain some data from UI in its request body. Here this character specifies that when the user requests the path /users or /users/, this function needs to be executed. If we change this to /greet, then the path requested by user should be /user/greet. Let's rerun the application. Press Ctrl+C to terminate the application. As you can see, /users no longer works. Inside this function, the send method will send back a text message to UI. Before we continue further, if you have noticed, each time we make change to the project, we need to terminate the application and run again. To avoid this, we will install the nodemon package which takes care of this. In the terminal, type the command npm install nodemon. Now to run the application, type the command nodemon -exec, npm start app.js. We can now make changes and node mode will restart the application automatically. Now let's make some modifications for our project. In the app.js file, let's change the route from /users to /deals. To rename the variable, click on the variable name and press F2. We will name the variable deals router. Also, we will rename the file, and change the response text to deals route. Let's check out the changes. We may remove this subroute /deals. It's working fine. For our project, we need the microservice to send the cards array to UI on request. For that, instead of sending the text message, we should send a JSON object. JSON stands for JavaScript Object Notation. A JSON object contains key-value pairs. Each key must be unique and values can be string, number, array or even another JSON object. Let's create a JSON object named JSON Response. For handset and desktop versions, we will create two keys: handset cards and web cards. We can use comma to separate entries. And we will copy the same cards array from UI to this JSON. Now, instead of sending text message, we will send this JSON object as response. For that, we will use the JSON function and pass this object to it. Let's run the application and see. Now we are getting the JSON response. We need to integrate it with Angular UI. Let's go back to UI and make the required changes. Since we will be getting the cards from API, now in UI, we just need to check whether the display is in handset mode or web mode. Instead of returning the cards array, we will return a boolean value. We will return true if display matches handset, else false. And we can create and assign to an observer variable isHandsetObserver, to observe the changes. Till we get the cards data from Express server, we can keep the cards variable as an empty array. The async pipe is used to get the latest value from an observable. Since cards is an array now, and not an observable, the async pipe needs to be removed from the HTML file. In the TS file, we will also add two more local variables: cards for handset and cards for web, for holding cards we will be receiving from server. Let it be empty arrays initially. And once we get the cards data from server, we will assign to these variables. After that we will check whether the current display is handset or not, and assign either of these variable to the cards variable. ngOnInit is the first callback method that gets executed in an Angular component. So inside ngOnInit method, we will subscribe to the observer isHandsetObserver. We know that the observer provides a boolean value based on whether the screen is handset or not. Let's create a local variable isHandset to hold this value. Whenever the screen size changes, we need a function to be called for assigning the cards variable to either cards for handset or cards for web. Let's write that function. We will name it loadCards. Inside this function, we will check the current display size. If the display is in handset mode, we will load cards array with cards for handset, else cards for web. We should invoke this function here. Now, importantly, we need to get the data from server to UI. For that we need to create an Angular service. Services are messengers in Angular which can be used for fetching data from server and giving it to UI. If there are three components A, B and C which request some data or functionality frequently, Angular service can stand there throughout the application lifecycle and provide service to requesting components. Let's create a service for our application. We will create a service named app inside the app folder. Open the folder in terminal and type the command ng generate service, app. Open the service file. For communicating with the server, we need to inject the HTTP client module in the constructor. Here we will write a function to fetch data from server. We will name the function getDeals. In the Express.js file, we have defined method for getMethod. Therefore we must use the same method in UI while calling the service. Let's use the getMethod of HTTP client instance. To this method, we must pass the URL of required server route. In this case, we are accessing localhost :3000/deals/. We may add or omit the final slash. We will return the response to whichever component is calling it. Since this is an asynchronous service call which doesn't give the response immediately, its type will be observable. Now, in the home component we must first inject this service. We will name the instance app service. After that, we can call the service method inside the ng-on-init function. Since it returns an observable, we must subscribe to it. The first parameter of the subscribe function contains the response. And the second parameter contains the error if in case any occurs. We must remember the structure of JSON we are passing from Express server, and map accordingly in UI. In case we successfully receive the data from Express server, we must assign the handset and web cards to respective local variables. And finally we will call the loadCards method here too. This makes sure that the correct cards data is populated. Let's run the UI and see. It doesn't seem to be working. In such cases, the first thing we must do is press F12 key. It opens the Developers Tools. Click on the Console tab. Here we can see an error due to missing HTTP client module. To fix that, let's open the app module file, and import the HTTP client module somewhere at the top, but below the browser module. Save everything and let's check again. Here we have another security issue, known as the cross-origin error. It happens when a resource from one origin tries to access another resource from a different origin. In this case it happened because the Express server running on port 3000 was tried to access by the UI application running at port 4200. To skip cross-origin checks, we must specify it in Express server. Open the Express project folder in terminal and install the course package by typing the command npm install course. Now we must include it in project using require statement. And just before the statements for defining routes, we must use the course. Now when we run the application, it's working fine. As we can see, the JSON object is received successfully and displayed as per the screen size. Let's change the defined route to see what happens. Since the route/deals/ no longer exists, the service call failed in UI and nothing is displayed. In case of such errors, for now, we will simply show an alert to the user, with a message. For that, In the error section of service call, write a alert statement with the message to be displayed. Now when an error occurs, the alert is displayed. For the loaded cards, we need to fetch background images from the server. Here I have some images to be used in the project. These should be copied to the images folder of public folder. These images are named, and these names should be linked to each cards in our JSON response. Let's add a new key image name in the response and map respective image name to each card. Also, now we can change the title of the cards. Now we need to access the images present in the public folder from UI. For that, open the HTML file of home component. In the mat card, we will add a background image style, to which we will assign a function that fetches the images from public folder of server. We will name the function getImage. As a parameter to the function, we will pass the key name image name of card which is received from the JSON response. Let's write the function definition in the TS file. The function must be returning a background image URL string. Here we will specify the public image path which is images/image name. Image name is being received from the HTML file. We must append it here and add the .jpg extension of image file. Let's run the application. Image is getting loaded correctly. Open the CSS file of home component and write a new style class. After adding these style attributes, copy the class name and paste in the class attribute of matcard. Now run the application. Looks much better. Also, we can add some styling to the title displayed in the cards. First we can add the MatApp background class which automatically adds a background color from the material library. This is very useful while we are using themes in our project. Also, we can add a new style class for the title. Everything looks fine now. In the next video, we will see how to create a notification pop-up in the UI using Angular Material Library. See you next time. Take care.